City Center Radio. It is episode 230, and I am your host, Christian Sanger. Today is Friday, March 1st, 2024. Interview week here at Holy City Center Radio rolls on the Friday edition. I hope you had a good leap day. Can you believe it's March already? I feel like I was just recording the first episode in February. Time is flying. I hope it feels that way for you as well, and things are great in your world. Have a fantastic weekend as well. If you have a chance, go to holycitycenter.com. You can find events that are going on in town, so you can do something a little fun this weekend, and of course beyond, as the calendar is daily, so be sure to do that. We'll be catching up next week on some of the latest news stories, as well as my trip over to Atlanta, which was a lot of fun. But today is another fantastic interview. Like I said, it's interview week. We got to finish it up. We got to have all 3 episodes with it. Today's guest is Julian Wiles. He is the founder and now director emeritus at Charleston Stage. That is the company that hosts productions at the historic Dock Street Theater, that beautiful venue. They've been around since 1978 when Julian founded the company. It became known as Charleston Stage, and he led that group for 45 seasons. He ultimately retired in 2023, but he is coming back here early 2024, so not a super long break, but he's coming back to just direct, and I'm saying just in quotes because that's a big task, but not doing some of the other things he's done, as he's no longer, in an official role with Charleston Stage. So he is going to direct a play called The Trip to Bountiful. It is something that I'll let him talk about in the interview, so we don't have a bunch of overlap with me just repeating, what the guy who knows more about it is going to say. It is going to be in production at the aforementioned Dock Street Theater. It started on February 28th, so it's already underway, but it goes until March 17th. So you do have some time to go ahead and get tickets and go check it out. If you've never been to Dock Street Theater, like I said, it's just an amazing place in general, but also an amazing place to see a production. And Julian gets into his thoughts about that venue and why he believes it's such a great place to have been the home for all these productions he's done over the years. So definitely enjoy the interview. I had a good time talking with Julian. So without any further delay, let's dive into that interview. And as promised, joining me now is Julian Wiles. So excited to have him on today's show to learn a little bit more about him and the upcoming production that I mentioned in the intro. Julian, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
No problem. So you're someone who's been in the Charleston scene for, several decades, but there may be some folks who don't know your background. Before we kind of get into what's going on in current day, if you could just let my listeners know a little bit about yourself, where you came from, and just kind of your career in just a nutshell, well, that would be fantastic.
Sure. I grew up on a farm in the middle of South Carolina in a little farming community called Fort Mott, South Carolina. I came to school at the College of Charleston, and then I went to grad school at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, where I studied scene design and costume and lighting design. And then I came back to Charleston in 1976 and worked for another theater company in town. And then in 1978, I founded what would become Charleston Stage Company.
And you were with Charleston Stage Company for 45 seasons. You ended up retiring last year, 2023. I know it hasn't exactly been a long time since you retired, but what led you to come back and decide to direct this upcoming production?
Well, I love directing, and I was very fortunate when I stepped down that they asked if I would direct a show a year for a few years. So this is the first of those. And the show, The Trip to Bountiful, is one of my favorite plays ever. And almost all the cast in the show I've directed before and have worked with before. So I was just very excited to come back and do it.
I can imagine. And even though you're, officially retired from Charleston Stage, I would imagine, maybe, not involved with them necessarily. Are you still planning on, writing or directing or being involved in theater, even, as you go forward?
I'm certainly going to continue to write. I doubt if I will direct outside of Charleston stage. It takes a lot of time, and there's a lot of other things that I haven't been able to do in the last 45 years. Travel and family and things like that. So that's where my focus will be moving forward.
Yeah, it makes sense. I'm sure it keeps you quite busy, that job. Like you said, not being able to take long trips or do some of those things. So I can imagine it'd be nice to have a little bit of a break from that. But obviously, this is a passion of yours, and you were happy to come back to direct this production. How has it felt to be back, directing for Charleston Stage again? I know it hasn't been exactly a super long break, but how has it been being back?
Um, well, it's been great. It actually, I took almost a year off. So it's the first time in 45 years I wasn't planning the next production. And so that break was nice. What's really nice now is because my sole task is just to direct this show. I'm not fundraising, I'm not managing a staff of almost 40 people, and all of the other things that go with running a theater company. I can really dig in and look at the play itself and spend more time planning uh, the directing and the interacting with the actors. And so it's been really a real pleasure and really kind of a new way of approaching a show, knowing that it was the only main thing on my agenda while I was working on it.
Oh yeah, I can imagine, not that you weren't putting your all into directing, but just having that sole focus, not having your hands in multiple things must be a little bit more relaxing. Not that directing a play is relaxing, I would imagine, but it must be nice to just, like you said, have that sole focus and not have to worry about some of the other things.
Yeah, you just don't have the distractions that and I enjoyed the other things I did, but I had a lot of responsibilities in running the company. And but fortunately, over the course of all these years, we have built a wonderful staff of almost 40 people, a terrific design staff, and an administrative staff as well. And so I got to come back and work with them, and they were handling so many things. I co-designed the set, but really my co-designer did most of the work on it as well. So that's um, Adam Adam Yaley, who really did the hard work on the design. And so I got to work with all these great people, and that was exciting to be back working with them again. If I missed anything really in retiring, it was the people that I've worked with. And even though I've stayed in touch, I don't see them like every single day like I used to.
Sure, of course. And, it sounds like, obviously when you were there, you had a hand in maybe bringing people on, hiring them and things. And it sounds like you believe that even though you've stepped back from something you've created, that you feel like everything is in good hands with these folks.
Yeah, I very much feel that way. Mary Beth Clark, who's the new artistic director, is doing a great job, and most of the staff. There've certainly been some new additions, but many of the staff that I work with are there. And as I said, one of the things that we did as we were coming out of COVID was trying to build the staff back up because we'd had to put some people on furloughs for a while, and we were also expanding the staff when we came back. So it was exciting that um, I had the time, in the little time after, and we still have COVID, of course, but in little time that COVID was not driving us crazy, to build that back up, and then to be able to go back with a full staff to work on this special play.
And speaking of this special play, as you called it, the trip to Bountiful is what can you give us a general overview of the production?
Yes, the trip to Bountiful is it's by one of America's great playwrights that people don't know as a an everyday name. Horton Foote is most famous for having written the screenplay for To Kill a Mockingbird. He adapted the novel from Harper Lee. He won the Academy Award for that. He also wrote the screenplay for Tender Mercies, and he won the Academy Award for that too. Trip to Bountiful was originally done as a live television show in the 1950s. Lillian Gish played the lead role, and it was such a success on television that they moved it to Broadway, where it won a couple of Tony Awards. And then it's been revived several times. Cecily Tyson played it a few years ago on Broadway, and there's a great film that was made in the early 1960s. that also won a lot of Academy Awards as well.
It sounds like you were, before signing on to this, you were quite familiar with this production already.
Yes, and I was fortunate. I was able to see the revival on Broadway with Cecily Tyson and
Oh,
Cuba
wow.
Gooding Jr. and Vanessa Williams, and just a first rate cast. And in that case, they had an all black cast, which is not how the play was written, but I think it speaks to the power of the play that it can be cast in many, many different ways, and it's a universal story about longing to go home and about the challenging dynamics of of a family that is dealing with someone who's older and is not quite there a little bit, and their needs and their needs of making their life, in this world. And it's very human. It's not. I mean, there are no lightsabers. There are no special effects. It's just about a group of three wonderful people who have their own flaws and rub up against each other in the wrong way sometime, but in the end, are looking for something special and what home is really about.
And I believe I read this somewhere else. And obviously, it sounds like this is a production that, as you said, can switch up the cast and it because it's such a universal feel to it, something that really anybody can relate to in some fashion. But and I believe I read that part of you actually saw a little bit of yourself in this production as far as it related to coming back to Charleston and founding Charleston Stage. I believe I read that somewhere. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, I'd say two things. One, coming back and directing the play at Charleston Stage is very much coming home for me,
Mm.
as well. But the home that Mrs. Watts wants to go back to in Bountiful, Texas, which was her farm home, her farmhouse and the land around it, which grew cotton and so forth. That certainly resonated with me because we had cotton growing on our farm, and we actually still have our farm in our family, and so I love going there, and I know how special having something like that in a family's life means so much to something, and why someone would want so desperately to go back to see it one more time.
And we've talked a little bit about the staff at Charleston Stage, but now as it relates to this cast, what can you tell us about some of the major players in this production? I'm sure any local theater goers may know some of the names involved, but tell us a little bit about them, how you believe their performances are going to be, and just how the process has been with them.
Well, this is one of the most first-rate casts I've ever worked with and one of the most experienced. I think between all of them, they played over 100 roles, either with Charleston Stage or on stages in Charleston.
Wow.
Samil Basler has done a number of roles with Charleston Stage, probably 10 or 12. I've directed her a number of times. She was in my play Helium. Don Brandenburg has directed plays in Charleston and been in a number of shows as well. Liz Duran started with us when she was just out of high school, and now she plays a middle-aged woman in a beautiful role. She's the meanie in the show, actually. One of our resident actors, Gracie Brantley, who came to Charleston Stage. So we have a newcomer there that has joined us and is really first rate, wonderfully trained actress. Vic Clark has done a number of roles with Charleston Stage. He plays our sheriff, and it's been great having him back. And Zan Rogers is new to Charleston Stage, although he's performed with Footlight and a number of other shows around the city. So it's a first rate group. I mean, every rehearsal nobody was unprepared. People were off book very quickly. They brought so many ideas and their own experiences to the roles, and so it's just made it a great process that doesn't always happen. And in this case, it's something very special.
And I would imagine, when things go that well, especially right off the bat, and you have a seasoned cast and everyone is working so well together. I mean, that's got to feel great and be a recipe for what you are likely going to see, a nice run that is well received by the community. I'm sure you can just feel that even before actually taking the stage in front of anyone.
Yeah, the first read through, we really had that feeling that it was special and everybody was bringing something to it. A lot of people think, you when you direct a play or you are performing in a play, you get instructions from somewhere, and there's like a teacher manual or there's something in the back of the book that tells you how to do it. But really, it's 5 weeks of discovery where you have the words and you have the plot, but you get to flesh out, each of the actors gets to flesh out, what each of those actors is thinking, each of those characters is thinking at any moment, how they approach each other, what those dynamics are. So, it's not just a director, it's like the whole cast of six bringing their ideas and their experiences. And that's what's excited to be in a rehearsal room with such wonderful talents and people who have experience, because they don't hesitate to make suggestions and to help create it. So you have a lot of minds working and my job is really just as a director is to kind of filter that and to focus it and take all those ideas and to be sure they mesh together. So we had the ingredients. We had, a terrific script, and we had this, wonderful cast to bring it to life.
And sort of circling back now to, from the founding in 1978 until now we're in 2024, obviously still involved in some capacity with Charleston Stage. When you look back with this career you've had, specifically with Charleston Stage, is it the longevity, that you're most proud of and that it's going to continue on, even though you are no longer, at the helm, or is there something else that you're just most proud of when you look back on this thing that you've created here in Charleston?
I would say I'm most proud of the fact that it's continuing to grow and to be imaginative and to go in new directions. I think a lot of the success of the company has been that we have core values. We have a large education program, for instance. We have over 350 kids that take classes. We have 55 high school apprentices and a free program that we do. We go into the schools. We have a resident company. Our production values are very high. So a lot of those goals and what we wanted the company to be and its core values have been there really for, all these 46 years. But how we produce it and what the different creative people that join the staff and have been part of the productions over the years, what they bring to it has just enhanced it year after year. So we've had to, reinvent ourselves, and we've had hurricanes and recessions and a pandemic, and we've had to learn how to do theater, amidst all of that. And the fact that it's survived, it's robust, the company is financially very sound. And artistically, I mean, for instance, every single production that the company did this year has never been produced at the Dock Street before. So we were able to, Mary Beth has been able to assemble a season and a team that could produce um, new works and things that people have not seen before. And that's exciting to see that continue to grow.
And you mentioned the Dock Street Theater, and I've always been curious of this. Does it ever get old being in that building, being involved in productions in that building, or even just being there watching a production? Does that ever get tiresome to you, or do you ever just kind of forget the history of that building?
No, I mean, how many people get to have a career in one of the great theaters in America? Not only is it historic and it's on the site of the first theater in America, but it's a beautiful theater. The
Hmm.
acoustics are absolutely terrific, and it's small. So, a lot of times when people go see shows, they're in big, big auditoriums that seat several thousand people, and you might be, 200 feet away. Here, nobody's more than 50 feet away, and it's a very intimate experience and a very special place to produce theater and the other creative arts that are produced at the Dock Street.
So the production, by the time this podcast comes out, will have started. It runs through March 17th as the aforementioned Dock Street Theater. Is there anything else about this production in particular, or about your career, or just anything involving your work with Charleston Stage? I didn't ask you about that you wanted to, relay to the listeners, or anything you feel is important.
Well, I'd like to mention the design team on this production. This is a kind of a small, intimate production. It's only a cast of six, but it has five sets. We have a two-bedroom apartment in Houston. We have a Houston bus station. We have a country store in a small town in Texas. We have a bus that someone's riding at one point. And then we reach the childhood home of Mrs. Watts in the town of Bountiful, Texas, which is an imaginary town. I'm very fortunate that we have this terrific design staff. Um, I mentioned Adam Gailey, who did the sets. Um, Haley O'Brien did the wonderful costumes, and that's another thing people don't really understand. I think they think we we order a play and they send you all the costumes and the sets, or you just copy those from somewhere else. In
Mm.
this case, every single set was designed here in Charleston, built in Charleston. All the costumes were designed. All the music is original. And we have stunning lighting design. So all of those design elements, just like a lot of actors bringing their own input into production, we have this incredible design team of like a dozen people that have worked really hard to bring this wonderful play to life as well.
Certainly sounds like you've got a great team, and everything is good to go, and it should be a very successful run for you all. For anyone who's listening and wants to find more information, get tickets, where's the best place for them to do so?
The best place is to go to charlestonstage.com. Everything's on our website. You can buy tickets there. You can download the tickets. All of the performance dates and everything are there as well. So charlestonstage.com is the place to go for tickets and more information.
All right, Julian, thank you so much for joining me today. It sounds like you have an amazing production that, as I said, when this comes out, will be underway, and I encourage everyone to go check it out. Thank you so much for joining me today and letting me learn a little bit about the production and your career. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
That's it. Get out there and enjoy your weekend. Hopefully that interview with Julian was a nice start. Be sure to go get tickets to that production. It sounds like it's going to be amazing. You got Julian directing. He obviously knows what he's doing, and he has a great cast and production team behind him. It should be a really good production, and it'll be kind of cool to be there and know that, hey, I'm seeing another play that was directed by the person who got this whole company going, who founded it back in 1978. So that adds a little extra special feeling to it, I'm sure. Have a great weekend. Thank you to Lindsay Marie Collins with LMC Sound System for producing this and every episode of Holy City Center Radio. And thank you to Tyler Boone, whose music you hear in each and every episode. If you have a moment, rate and review this podcast, leave stars, whatever. Anything you can do, I greatly appreciate it. You can also go to patreon.com/Holy City Center to sign up for one of those support tiers. I will be back on Monday diving into the news, getting back to normal after interview week, but I hope you enjoyed it. And we will have more interviews in the future, of course. That wasn't just a one-off. We will have some more, and looking forward to those as well. But back to the normal show on Monday. Until then, good night and good luck.